This movie's incredibly powerful. It really wrecked me in a lot of ways.
It's up for Best Picture, Best International Feature, and Best Actress for the great Fernanda Torres. It's I'm Still Here. We're playing catch up with it. It is in the theaters now, and I think all these international features are in some capacity. You can play catch up with all those award nominees, but we wanted to make sure we definitely talked about this one. This is a thing that we do around here. We love to make sure we get to all 5 of the international feature nominees. So if that is important to you as well, come and hang out with us. Alonso, what's this film about?
Tá todo mundo lá fora falando da gente. A Vera não sabe o que tá acontecendo. Essa carta tá mentindo pra gente!
This is a Brazilian film that is based on a true story and a recent Brazilian history. It begins in 1970 when there is a military dictatorship running the country. We meet a family. The mother is Fernanda Torres, and everything seems great. They live by the beach, and it's 5 kids, and it's the busy, bustling house, but there's a lot of love. And Fernanda Torres's husband, played by Selton Mello, is an architect, and we find out a former congressman, and before they know it, people start showing up at the house and saying, you need to come with us for questioning. And then they come back and pick up the mother and one of the daughters as well. And as we get into this, we kind of realize that this military dictatorship isn't just a thing that's happening out there, but it's going to directly affect this family and the people they know and the way they live their lives. And over the course of the main part of the story, with a few flash forwards to what happens later, we get an understanding of how the sort of day in, day out lives of these people has been directly affected by governmental action. And we see Fernanda Torres as a mother doing everything she can to keep the household together, to keep her children's spirits up, and to try and understand what's going on around her and what's happened with her husband. This movie is incredibly powerful. It really wrecked me in a lot of ways. Not in a small amount, because if I were going to cast somebody to play my mother in the 1970s, Fernanda Torres would not be far off. Like they don't look identical, but there's a bearing to her that I found very familiar.
They must have really caught you off guard, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, I was did not walk in knowing that was going to happen. Yeah. But it's also, I think, just this film about how, we look at tumultuous times in history, and sadly, I think we're in one. Yeah. And we think of it in these big, broad strokes, and it very often comes down to households and, what happens when the father is taken away and no one will confirm or deny that he was ever arrested or that he is or isn't dead. And the kind of limbo that leaves loved ones in, and leaves a family sort of trying to grapple with and figure out as time passes. I did not know really what this movie was about at all going in, which is a rare treat for me. Yeah. It's the reason I don't watch trailers, is because that's the thing I strive for. And I was just, this movie is like 2 hours and 15 minutes, and it just zipped by. Yeah. I was so fascinated by it. And, Salles does such a great job of kind of just presenting the rhythms of the household. And yes, we know that, we see the oldest daughter, getting pulled over in a military checkpoint because they're looking for these kidnappers or whatever. But overall, it doesn't seem to really affect the family, and you get a sense of what the siblings are like and how the parents get along with each other and get along with their kids. And it's very lovely. And it's almost kind of like this sort of Richard Linklater-y moment of well, there's not really a plot here, but I do love hanging out with these people. And then the plot kicks in, and you needed all that to kind of illustrate what happens to them and what the contrasts are. This is just a super powerful filmmaking. Fernanda Torres gives an extraordinary performance. I hope more people get to see it. It's probably the least seen of the 10 Best Picture nominations, but because it's a Best Picture nominee, I imagine it's going to be showing up in a lot of theaters that might otherwise not play a Portuguese language Brazilian import. And so if you can see it, please do.
Oh, right. I saw it at the AMC in Torrance, not too far from here. So like Nick went to see Dogman at 11 and I went to see I'm Still Here. And we met up afterward. Shout out to Glenn and Cheryl, our longtime viewers who I ran into in the lobby coming out of the theater. They were there too. Hello, hello. So it is, I think, because it's up for all these Oscars, it is in theaters more than it might have been. Yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned how effectively he sets up this world, because you get brought into the rhythms. It all seems like such an effortless, idealized life.
Yeah.
Like the kids are all lively and they're very specifically drawn and they all have different interests, whether it's like sports or politics or music or whatever. And you get a real sense of the boisterous life and love in this home, and they're into art and they're into music and books. Like every wall is crammed with books. Like, these are people who are engaged with the world. They are interested in life, like you, exactly. And I think it speaks a lot to what is important to them as they raise their children.
Yeah.
And so, without any words, we can glean all of that about how they are as parents. And they have parties and there's like smoking and drinking and dancing, and it all seems so warm and so free. And so they establish really effectively what the family is like. And I was thinking about you, Alonso, because I know that although it's a totally different continent, totally different language, like I was thinking about you and your big family, and I can imagine that the 70s might have been like that in your house too.
A little bit. Yeah, there were definitely a lot of similarities where I was like, okay, yeah, this feels familiar.
Yeah, for sure. And then you say Fernanda Torres is Eunice is how they pronounce her name, Eunice. She's so subtle. Like when he's getting in the car with these people and he's leaving, she has to simultaneously put up a brave face for him and for the children, while also indicating to us her fear.
Right.
And her insecurity about how this is going to go down, the uncertainty of it all, because she's been around long enough to know this can't be good.
Right, exactly.
But she cannot let her kids know that. And how she addresses them all. She's so good on the fly as far as like coming up with a quick lie or coming up with a quick reason for why things are happening. And she knows she can tell some things to the older daughters, but not as much to the two youngest. And so watching her navigate all of that with the effortlessness with which she puts together a lunch party, is kind of cool. And she's so chic. She dresses so elegantly. She's great, and this place looks so perfect right there on the corner overlooking the beach. Like from the outside, you would think, oh, this is a great, great life they have.
The production design is so good and so essential to the story, because not only is that house so vibrant and alive, but then when later on, when we see the house later, like it resonates the change that we register. I love how. And for a while I thought, is this movie like kind of castigating her for being like, an authoritarian government in the way that she's withholding information from the kids? But then I realized, no, that's parenting. Like
your mom protect your kids.
Your mom is like, so like with the older daughters, she can kind of let them in on what's going on and kind of clue them in on things. But like the two significantly younger ones, they get a whole different version, and they should, and it's really beautiful how that is put together. Warren Ellis's score is really great,
so good.
It's subdued but really kind of just delivers emotionally. This movie was so powerful. It really put me through the ringer.
Yeah,
in a good way, though.
Yeah. And the use of lighting, too, because in the beginning, it's like sun-splashed and vibrant. And then when the guys are walking through the house and like shutting the curtains in every single room, like that does so much to change the vibe and to instill fear. And there's a tension that comes from that. Like he's very methodically walking through every single curtain, all closed up. And then kids will come home like, where's dad? Like, what's going on? What's this? And like, just it picks up, like the tension of that picks up, and it really shifts, but that shift makes sense. So, go ahead.
No, just then the whole thing with it being the 70s, where like she's trying to take money out of the bank, and it's like, oh, well, your husband has to sign,
fucking patriarchy, like, man.
Yeah, but then at the same time, like she can't, when she's trying to have him declared dead, it's like nobody will do that either, and so she's stuck in this limbo. Not unlike the lead character in The Girl in the Needle at the beginning of the movie,
Right? We can't do anything for you without the papers for your husband, right? Yeah. I will say that it makes a shift toward the end that at first I was like, oh, do we need this? And then I'm like, oh,
yeah, we
I
do.
see why we did this.
Yeah.
And that was like a moment. So I
Yeah.
don't want to spoil it, but
No.
the ending is a killer.
Yeah.
So what's your number then on I'm Still Here?
Like a 9.4. It's extraordinary. And when I did my top 10 list, I mentioned a few films that I hadn't seen yet that I suspected could have popped in there, and this was one of them, and it certainly is.
Oh, okay. I will say a 9. It's great. Yeah, if you can go see it in a theater, you definitely should, and it does not feel as long as the running time is, and stick around through the credits, and that's all very informative and emotional as well. So
absolutely,
check it out.